And then as sales started to take off and as the business starts to grow, and as you can imagine, when you doing $10 million a year, like you need multiple employees. That's not a beast or an animal that you and I can handle.
If you don't know who we are, we have a portfolio of brands and services that does 15 million a year. Our largest brand did over 10 million last year. And we actually have a challenge going on where we're going to do our best to get to 10 million or 8 figures again this year. I'm actually really excited, Andy. We're getting ready to release our first kind of blog recap that goes through in detail our numbers from our brand and talks about like our revenue, our ACOS, our TACOS, our PPC spend, and a lot of other tips and details that we learned. We just put one together for December, some of the things that went well and some of the things that didn't go well. And so we'll be releasing that this week. And it's just going to be an inside look to our brand in a way that it's hard to go through on the show, all the details. So I'm really excited for that. And then yesterday, we actually just came out with our first weekly newsletter called The Daily Seller that we're going to be putting out. And it just goes through kind of Amazon news and snippets and some ideas and things that we're seeing. And I thought it looked really good. So I was excited about it. We released that just today, actually. This morning, we sent that out. And so if you didn't get those, if you didn't see that weekly email that we're going to be putting out, or if you want updates to this blog where we'll be going through our $10 million challenge and what we're doing and what we're seeing in our brand, and we'll tell you our numbers every month, good or bad. Well, hopefully good. But even if it's bad, actually December was not the greatest. We had some major challenges. So we go through that in the blog. And if you want to follow that, if you want to see what we're doing, trying to get to $10 million in sales this year, make sure you go to amazingfreedom.com and you can just sign up to be an insider. And if you become an insider, then we send you these updates and you actually get access to a couple other tools that will some we already have available and more that we'll be releasing. And you'll really just get updates to all things that we're doing, building our brand and what's going on with Amazing Freedom. And we're just coming out with that early this year in 2022. And we're going to be adding more, but I'm really excited. I think it's coming along good now. So, all right, Andy, what's up with you? What's going on in the Amazon seller life, personal life? What do you have going on?
Yeah, everything you were saying there, it is very exciting. The last 2 years for you and I really have been a whirlwind. Selling $20 million in 2 years with our brand. And I'm excited that we're finally at a spot now where we can come back and do some lives, where we can push out a newsletter. And I think we're going to talk about that today. It really is because of the amazing team that you've built out. You've hired an incredible amount of virtual workers from all over the world. And now they've been able to come in and do a lot of the work that we were doing on the brand. So we're able to kind of focus and take some time to share with folks, which to me is exciting because, like I always say, this was what really attracted me to the Amazon selling community, was how how kind that folks were that were already selling, that helped me learn and understand how to sell along the way. And I still say this every time I go to an Amazon conference or an Amazon meetup. It blows me away how folks are so readily able to share best practices with one another, which I don't think typically happens in most industries. But I think our industry is still relatively new. We talk about this. It's still kind of a lonely industry. When I go around to my neighbors, most of them really have no idea what I do. They still think I sell shoes on eBay. They just don't understand how incredible the scaling opportunity is on Amazon, that we're able to send our products in, like we've talked about, and able to scale to $10 million, $12 million a year over the last 2 years.
Can I say something about just that kindness note? We started sending out some emails recently, the newsletter. I just want to say thank you to everybody who has shared that. We're actually asking if you can just forward any of our emails maybe to someone that you think needs to either get started selling on Amazon or to scale their business. We appreciate that. So we're on a mission. We've said this a number of times now. We're on a mission to try to help 1 million people, build freedom through whether some kind of online business or, ideally Amazon selling is what we think, or selling e-commerce products. So if you've shared that, I just want to say thank you. If you've ever left us a review on iTunes for the podcast, That helps a lot. I want to say thank you. And if you subscribe to our YouTube channel or leave a comment, hit that like button. We do appreciate that. So just along that kindness route, Andy, I've seen a lot of that already since we've come back. The number of emails of people saying, we sent an email saying that we're back with our podcast. We had a number of people reply actually to the email and say how excited they were. And that feels good, just to know that people missed us when we were on that 18-month break and are looking forward to seeing what we've learned over the past 2 years and what we're going to be sharing this year. So thank you to everybody who's been listening and who has shared. It definitely means a lot. And we read all the comments and the emails. It's something that does motivate us and help us to want to do more.
Well, I'm excited because, we shared this with our team on Friday that for me, my life took a dramatic change just because my next door neighbor came over and she shared the message of selling on Amazon. And she shared that message with me for 2 straight years. I kept pushing her off, but finally that message got through. And that's what I'm excited about as we share, as we bring out the newsletter, that we continue to just push that message out that folks that want to learn how to create a great side hustle, if they want to learn how to create a full-time hustle like you and I have, building a full-time income, it really is a message of, look, this is just in the first inning. Amazon it's less than a 20-year-old company, and there is still massive opportunity for folks that want to create a at-home business to be able to build it. And we see it really every day in our Amazon seller tribe, where those folks post numbers of new records of 500,000, 1 million, 4 million. So that's incredible.
Yeah. So, all right, today we're going to be talking about how we scaled our team during our really high growth period. We went from having 2 or 3 team members, I think we had 3 actually, and then we scaled up to 40 at one point. So we grew really, really fast. So we're going to talk about that. But before we get into that, you said before we got started, you had a story to tell me. What was the story?
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever shared this story with you, but it relates to business and it relates to a number of decisions that you and I have actually had to make. As your business grows, and if you've been in business for any amount of time, oftentimes you're going to be faced with decisions where you could do things that may not be very ethical, right? In life in general, we're often faced with those decisions, but especially when it comes to business. In this story, every time we've been faced with those decisions, right, you and I always say, look, we'll push the envelope. We want to be able to get our product in the hands of people, but we're never going to do anything that pushes it so far that, hey, if it could become criminal, because I don't want to spend any time right in jail. And that's a great line of Steve Simonson. But so this is going back about almost 20 years ago when we first started house parenting. So my wife and I were house parenting at a residential boarding school for kids that were financially needy. So a lot of these kids came from rough situations and they lived with us. So we lived with 12 high school boys. Well, one day, Miss Slamons and I, my wife and I say Miss Slamons because that's what the kids called us. We hear the doorbell ring. We go to the door and open it up. And there's 2 guys in dark suits and sunglasses, and they present themselves as from the Secret Service. And so I said, can you repeat that again? Where are you from? They said, we're from the Secret Service, the Secret Service of the White House. And we need to interrogate some students in your house. So Miss Slamons and I were like, whoa, we looked at the car. It was the typical car, right? It had tinted windows. They were the real deal. It was the real Secret Service. So I'm really nervous, have no idea, what's going on. We have to call all of our students. We got to call the school. A lot of them were in after school activities. Again, we had 12 of them at the time. They had to all come home. They isolated them. And then these 2 Secret Service guys brought 1 student in at a time. We weren't in it, but we could see they were in a computer room that has like glasses, and they just start interrogating each student. So we still don't know exactly what's happened or what went down right at this time. But student after student, some of these guys were big football players, like 250 pounds. Every single student, though, comes out of that room after they're being interrogated crying. So we knew it had to be like something serious, right? Well, come to find out what happened was there was some students who thought it was funny. They sent a threatening message. At the time, Bill Clinton was the president. They sent a threatening message to the White House email address. So again, this is like 2000 and probably 2001, 2002, and threatened Hillary Clinton. So they were French students, so they wrote it in French, but basically the threat was like, "Hey, we're gonna kill you," right? They thought it was funny. It was obviously super dumb. And the bad thing was they logged into one of the younger students' accounts, and so it looked like it came from this younger student. Here's the end of the story, though. They finally, as they interrogate them one by one, the student that did it broke down. He admitted that he was the one that did it, and so he got in all kinds of trouble, right? But I share that story because it always stuck with me. Like, look, you can never cross that line where you're going to do something, especially when it comes into business. You can push the envelope, but never cross that line where it becomes criminal. And thankfully, those students, they did get suspended. They didn't get kicked out of the school. And actually, one of the students that was involved in it, he wanted to go in the military, and he ended up serving 3 tours in Iraq. So luckily, it didn't stain his record in any way.
That is wild. You've never told me that story. That's the first time I'm hearing that. So yeah, I definitely would remember if I had heard that before. So they got in trouble from the school, but they didn't get in any kind of like federal trouble as far as you know?
No, because you know what? They totally came clean. So this is what we always teach our students is, look, if you get caught, don't try to hide. Don't try to manufacture any other lies. Just tell the truth. You're going to get consequences, which they did get consequences. But again, luckily, it didn't permanently go on the record. And the one student that was involved, he was able to serve many years in the military.
That's wild. Do you watch any shows like crime shows or dramas around crime or anything? Is that the type of shows you watch ever?
Some, yeah.
We've been watching the show The Blacklist or whatever with James Spade, I think. And so when you're telling that story, I'm just thinking like in my head, if that ever happened, you're thinking like, are these guys legit? Are these actually fake Secret Service? You never know what's running through your head. That's wild. So, okay, good life lesson and good Amazon lesson as far as pushing the envelope sometimes, but nothing that's going to have the Secret Service knocking at your door. So I like it. Good talk. All right. So today, our main topic, Andy, I want to talk about was kind of the emotional roller coaster that we went through when our brand was really experiencing a time period of high growth. We had been building the brand with really just me and you for over 2 years, where at least to start, like the research and the you went to China how many times? 3 times? 3 times during the kind of research of the products and what we were building. And so for a long time, it was just us, right? And then we talked about this before. When we first started selling our first product, we didn't have anyone. And so when some customer service complaints or concerns came up, we actually answered the phone a couple of times or a number of times for a period of a month or two. And we were on the phones until that's one of the first things you want to outsource, right? So if you have any type of product you're selling that requires customer service, definitely look to outsource that first. So that was our first hire for this brand. We hired someone named Jen to come and get on the phones. She's actually been with us now 3.5 years, I think we're coming up to at this point. It's kind of crazy. So she's been a customer service employee from the Philippines that's been with us for that long now. But then it still was only us for a while until we started selling a lot more, and we realized that we really just needed to scale up our team. We had some 3PL help. Your brother was helping us at one point. We've had stuff with Steve and locally in our warehouse. So we've had some other kind of like contractors, I guess. And I know a lot of people listening probably use a 3PL or some type of service that really takes the place of what traditionally years ago you needed as your own employees. You can kind of outsource that way. But we realized that we needed a lot of back-end team members that are not really you're not usually easily able to outsource unless you're working with some agencies or something. But we thought we could do it in-house. We have experience working with VAs. I've hired over 100 and something VAs for our Amazing Freedom services over the past 5 years. And now we've hired nearly 100 for our brand. So 250 something total, I think I'm up to hiring. So we thought we could do it ourselves. But the scale of how quickly we had to hire people in 2020 when we were taking off was insane. And unlike anything we had been through before. So I wanted to just ask you like your insights from a kind of emotional and relationship level of bringing on, we were up to 40 people at one point. in a 12-month period, just what that kind of did to you in a good, bad way, just, what the emotions you went through, the relationships. What was your experience as we started kind of hiring and going from, we hired one person in January, thankfully, before we really, as we were ramping up to help with our supply chain. So she started helping, Lou started helping with our WeChats and talking to manufacturers. That was huge, right? Maybe start there, because that was a place where we were spending hours every single night talking to our manufacturers, and that took a huge burden off our shoulders. So maybe start there, and we can go from there.
I think it's good too to talk about that. We definitely set out that we wanted to be lean and mean. And so we weren't going to build a team. We weren't going to take on extra costs unless it absolutely had to be done. And we did that for probably 18 months, right? The first 18 months, it was just you and I. And then as sales started to take off and as the business starts to grow, and as you can imagine, when you doing $10 million a year, like, you need multiple employees. That's not a beast or an animal that you and I can handle. And so that's when, you said, okay, hey, let's start bringing some of these folks on. And thankfully, one of the first hires was logistics and working with those manufacturers, because when you are working with manufacturers in China, it is extremely difficult because they're in a different time zone, and speed is of the essence. And so, we were up often from 9 o'clock till 1 o'clock in the morning, chatting with these manufacturers, working out the specs for the products, working out the orders. And so being able to hire her and bring her on was phenomenal. And she's still with us over 2.5 years later, and she does a great job. And so that to me was exciting, being able to hand that off to her. And like most entrepreneurs, you think that, folks can't do it as good as you, or you wonder if they can. But I think with proper coaching, proper training, we've now found out what a lot of other people that have been in business for a while have always known, that it's always people that are going to help you scale, people that are going to help you grow. And that to me has been the exciting thing. Being part, it's almost like a mini family. We often talk about that. Look, with the people you work with, you spend a tremendous amount of time. So whether you work at a school, whether you work at a company, oftentimes you're there 40, 50 hours a week. That's a significant amount of time. And so I think we've learned some lessons along the way as well in hiring, that we hire now more for attitude over skills, because we think that with the proper coaching and the proper SOPs, we can teach that. But what we've discovered is it's really the enthusiasm, the positive spirit, and the attitude of our team members that really makes it work.
Yeah, and one thing, just everything you said was so true and been such a learning lesson. One analogy, or I think that's the right word, comparison that I think is better than a family even, is like a team. And I know, Andy, you've been a coach, you've been part of sports teams. And so I feel like over the last 2 years, I've learned this better, that building a business team is just like having a sports team. And I think that's why so many people like sports, training kids up to be part of sports, because it really prepares you for life. And so unlike a family, if somebody's not performing on your team, unfortunately, you do have to make some tough decisions sometimes to let them go. Usually with a family, you're not going to let someone go if they disappoint you or something, right? But sometimes you do have to make that decision with the business team. And so that's, I think, the cool thing is that you can have a team captain, you can have your forwards, your defensive people. And really there's, people are shouting at each other to do better on the field. And just because they're shouting, it doesn't mean that they're mad at them. It just means, hey, you're the person who's kind of seeing the field and shouting out the orders. And that's something I've seen just play out. And so you mentioned that we tried to stay lean and mean, which I think was great. But I will, to add on to your point, I think we waited a little bit too long for like our logistics person to bring her in, because afterwards, like you said, we realized, wow, this was a huge amount of time off our shoulders. And she ended up being able to do it pretty much as good as we could. And like you said, as long as we're coaching, we're staying in there, it's still there. So some things we waited too long in hindsight. But then once we did get it in there, it allowed us to really start focusing on other areas that mattered, like bringing on more people. So then the next thing that we brought on, which I don't know if I would bring this in this exact order necessarily, but we brought in a finance and an inventory person to help us on our books and on the inventory projections. That helped a lot. I don't know if that's necessarily the order I would do it if I was hiring a team right now. So I'll talk about that maybe more in a future episode. But that was really helpful still. And it was needed at the time because we were growing so fast. We were getting behind on our books and our inventory planning and forecasting. So that was super helpful. Then from there was kind of a whirlwind. And I would have to look back. I can't even remember the order that we hired people after that point, because there was a period for a couple months where I was hiring 2 to 3 people a week to get up to about 20 to between 20, 25 team members. And so I can't remember the order, but it really went quickly after that. And there's been so many great team members that it's hard to pinpoint just one. But we brought a couple really, really key pieces, such as kind of an operations manager at one point. Once we got past 10 people, that was really important. And then an Amazon brand manager. So we have a guy with us, Ken, who's really smart, and he handles most of our Amazon account management items day to day. And we were just talking about this the other day, Andy, like he's better at a lot of this account management stuff than we are now, because he's in there every day. And that's been a huge burden lifted. Just all the little stuff like calling seller support and answering messages. And when products go down or there's a problem or adding new products, that's been really helpful. So those are some key pieces we've added. Maybe talk to a little bit like the relationship aspect of just adding in so many team members. We did a lot of meetings. We set up things like weekly all teams meetings and quarterly meetings and themes, end of year parties. At the end of every quarter, we have kind of a mini party. And then at the end of year, we have a Christmas party. Deanna did something really cool this last year where we actually did like a vision board planning for all of our team. That was probably one of my favorite quarters as far as team building that we did. So maybe talk to that a little bit and what it's meant as far as just the relationships and the emotions of going from 2 team members to 30 something that we're kind of building relationships with.
Yeah. Again, it was something new for us. I think that probably a lot of companies are going through this when you talk about virtual working situations because of COVID. The last 2 years, a lot of companies have said, okay, you know what, you can work from home. But then the struggle is, well, how do you keep those employees engaged, right? How do you keep them on mission? How do you prevent the mission drift? And so, I think we started to realize that we were bringing on all these people and it was great, but we needed to really have a laser focus in order to keep them engaged, in order so that, the high performing ones weren't bored, or the other ones that maybe had too much, you had to try to lessen some of their workload. But overall, what I think our challenge was, we said, okay, hey, look, we're all new to this company in the last year. How can we move as a team? Again, going back to your sports analogy, very similar to, if there was a new franchise in the NBA, generally their first year is extremely difficult, right? Because they're trying to figure everything out. They have younger players. They got new folks in different positions. Well, that's kind of where we were. And, I think that, again, you did a masterful job in coming up with what our culture was going to be. And then every week, just kind of hitting that. And again, the biggest thing I think for you and I too is, because all of our team members are virtual, is that we always have said, hey, look, we're going to lead with respect. So we're going to give you respect. We're always going to treat you as an equal, as we're talking to you, as we're assigning tasks. We're never going to talk down. We're always going to treat you just like a team would, right? In team players. Now, like you said, there may be times as a coach where you do have to kind of get in on your team. You got to, push them to perform higher. But overall, there's always going to be a respect level there. And I think that being new to it over the last 2 years and growing it, again, if you're just joining us now, we have 2 years where we've done over $10 million, which very few companies ever get to. And this is not a flex or a brag. I'm super thankful, super appreciative. And I think we're just getting started. And I look forward to getting you to hit the 20 million and the 50 million. But very few companies ever get to the point where they have $10 million in revenue. And again, super thankful we've been able to do that 2 years in a row, but it all has hinged on the amazing team that we have, that we work with on a daily basis.
Yeah, and we've talked about this last couple of weeks, how we were off for 18 months on the podcast, how we haven't done as much. And yeah, our brain was exploding, but most of my time the last 2 years has been spent with the team. So my calendar went from pretty light as far as like a structured calendar to every day I basically had some type of meeting with, eventually would have set up like leader meetings with the leader. And I'm finally getting that down, because we do have a couple of people that have been elevated to a leader position where they can take over some of these meetings that I was doing, and I don't need to be there, which is, I think, the ultimate goal when you're building a team, to try to delegate as many of the decision making that you can to other leaders within your division and within your team, and build up those leaders so that you are making the least number of decisions that you can, which might sound like a bad thing at first, but really is a good thing if you can get your team to that place. You only want to be making the decisions that only you can make. If you're the only person that can make that decision, because if it gets wrong, it's going to be business critical, business ending, you probably still need to make that. But if it's something that another leader can make, and if they get it wrong, you can course correct afterwards, you want to try to delegate that over time. But it does take time. It's taken a couple years because we went from 2 to 40 to get there. If you're at the 6-figure level or the 7-figure level, you're obviously not going to need 20, 30, 40 team members. You're going to need maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe up to 10 in that range. And so you're not going to have as much all at once, but you're still going to need to set things up like daily check-ins, weekly kind of all team meetings, quarterly goals and planning. Those are important, I think, no matter what your business size is. And even if you're by yourself, Andy and I are going to later today have a revenue meeting and a inventory kind of forecasting meeting that we do every week now. I think we talked about this last week, that we got off of that and we ran into some trouble. And so now every week, our inventory manager / finance manager and our Amazon brand manager and Andy and I get together and we look at the past week of sales and kind of forecasting the next couple months. And so you're going to need to do that type of stuff. And if it's just you and your business, I still recommend that you have your profitability, kind of your inventory planning, and you dedicate a day of the week, every 2 weeks, maybe every once a month is getting kind of long. Even if you're just getting started, like it's got to be pretty, as long as you're selling anything, it should be pretty frequent, weekly recommended. And you're just looking, what was my margins last week per SKU if you can? What's my forecast? And we've done that, and that's been a huge help. And that's something we're going to do. We do that every Wednesday with the team. And so that's been the best thing. Setting these systems in place, being able to scale, seeing these leaders rise within the company, and then being able to delegate it and take some burden off our shoulders. And we're finally getting to that point better, but it's always a struggle. That's been the most rewarding part of the process.
Let me ask you this question, Nate. As an Amazon seller, what do you think, when you hit what number of revenue should folks begin to start looking at hiring another virtual team member? So is it, 250,000? Is it 500,000? How would you answer that? Because there's probably a lot of folks that are watching this that are wondering, well, how much do I need to be selling before I need to look at building out a team?
Yeah, I think every business is different. That's a challenge. If you're doing an arbitrage business, it's different from a wholesale and a private label. We've said this for years, there seems to be these plateaus that you run into as a seller. And for whatever reason, it seems like it normally starts to occur around like the 30,000 a month sales level, right? If you're starting off, you can kind of get there by yourself, and then you run into a wall a little bit, I feel like. And then the 50,000 a month mark, kind of does that. And then after that, you can usually scale up to 100,000 a month. And then you run into kind of another wall. Has that been your experience as far as what you've seen other sellers, yourself and other sellers the last couple of years?
Yeah, definitely. You hit those different plateaus where you got to do something different.
So that might be a signal, like you're hitting a plateau, like you need to, like, obviously you're not spending your time through the week on enough high level activities that you're plateauing. That's kind of the result of that. So that's one indication. Another indication is you're just burned out. And that's the point we were at when we started hiring some of these team members, was we were burned out from spending from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. talking on WeChat, right? Like that just had burned us out. So that's another sign that it's time to hire somebody. I would say to get to $1 million in sales, for a year, I would recommend to have 2 to 3 virtual team members on your team. And if you don't, you're probably doing too much stuff on your own, and you are going to have trouble scaling beyond that. So you should have at least 3. You should have like an overall operations account manager person. You should have someone handling your logistics and your manufacturing talk. And you should have definitely a customer service rep. If you need any of that should be someone handling that. And you might be able to get to $1 million just with those team members. Obviously, you can do it by yourself. You did it, Andy, with a couple brands by yourself, no virtual team members. I'm saying if you want to maximize your efficiency in your time, that'd be my recommendation. Now, to go from $1 million to $5 million, I think it really steps up from there. I think you need to have a team at least around 10, typically 5 to 10 people, whether that's US people or some type of virtual remote people. And then to get from 5 to 10, I think every business is different, but if you do some research out there, I've done a little bit of this and I don't know how accurate it is, but most large companies, think about your Amazons, your Microsofts, those, they like to look at their revenue per employee. And typically they can kind of come up with, depending on the niche of the business, whether it's like a software or a physical product business or a retail, typically, especially retail, because retail's been around so long, like in big box store retail, Walmart, Target, they can really pinpoint the number of revenue per employee pretty good. And so when you start to scale out, like you start to realize like, hey, if I'm doing $200,000 of sales per employee for a year, that's actually pretty good. Like if you extrapolate that out long-term. So I've kind of done a little bit of that and saying, hey, like we probably could kind of maximize our efficiency around 20 to 25 team members as far as a revenue per employee standpoint. Every business is different. So that's probably like not the best way to do it, but that can kind of give you an idea. Like if you only have $20,000 of revenue per employee, like you probably have too many employees, right? But if you have $1 million of revenue per employee, you might not have enough team members that are helping you to scale, because like that's an insane amount of revenue per team member. And if you think about it, if you get to $1 million of sales all by yourself with no help, that's what you're doing essentially. You have, in that case, you're all by yourself. So you're doing all the work. So you definitely are an employee of your business. So you're more employee than owner at that point. That's something to maybe think about mindset wise, but be proud of yourself. You earned a lot of revenue per employee, that one employee, $1 million per employee. That's an insane amount. If you look at Amazon, who has 1 million plus employees right now, if they had $1 million per employee, I don't know what that public math. I'm trying to think what that is. That's a lot more than what the revenue is, I believe, at this point, right? So that's pretty good there, and that's what I would maybe look at.
That's awesome. And since you bring it up, I got to bring something that's a little off topic, but listen to this. If AirPods, so we all know Apple makes AirPods. If they were their own company, all they did was sell and make AirPods. Do you know where they would stand as far as the largest company in the world? They would be the 73rd largest company in the world
by revenue.
175 billion market cap, just the iPads. So here's some stats.
Wait, iPads or AirPods?
AirPods. I'm sorry, AirPods. 2017, Apple sold 16 million. 2018, 35 million. 2019, 60 million. 2020, 73 million. 2021, they sold 100 million AirPods. $200 is the average price, equals $208 billion, a net profit of $7 billion. Just AirPods. Is that insane?
That's insane. You think how many businesses out there that have that much revenue, but they are losing money, first of all, right? But you know that Apple's not losing money on the AirPods, like their margins are good. And so, okay, so you came up with then a market cap based on their profitability and the PE ratio or something.
Yes, it would be a 25 PE, which equals $175 billion. So if they were a standalone company, they would be worth, just the AirPods, $175 billion.
That's actually low. Most like tech companies like that are trading at more than a 25 PE. You think like Tesla, it's at like, I don't even know, it's like 1,000 PE or something.
So just the AirPods, they'd be worth more than 2 Ubers, 2 Stripes, and 1.3 Goldman stocks.
Well, that's why Apple's got a market cap of 2 trillion, right? And a lot of people are saying, how is Apple going to get from 2 trillion to 3 trillion? They got to come out with like Apple Cars or Apple VR, right? So that's insane. So I mean, the cool thing is that that's a physical product brand though, right? Like Apple is, I mean, they have a lot of tech software side to it too, but I mean, they're a physical product, and the power of having a good brand is really branding, right?
Oh, for sure. And the funny thing is, what I think about too, is they're really not that great of a product. Like if I exercise with them, in 20 minutes, they fall out of my ears, right?
Me too. Yeah.
It's just all about the branding.
I know I'm a little bit disappointed in how well my AirPods stick in, but I guess that's a topic for a different thing. So that's pretty crazy. All right. No, that was interesting. Hey, I want to hit a couple of things before we wrap up today. I want to last reminder today, as we do this live, Amazon seller fees go up soon. So definitely check out your FBA fees, your storage fees as it relates to your margins. the removal and the disposal fees are the insane thing. They're going up by over 100%. I mean, why do you think they jacked it up so much this time, Andy?
That's the kind of the game, right? Amazon is going to continue to squeeze. They started out, they were losing tremendous amount of money with FBA, and now, like every business, they have to start, restricting. They got to start getting some of that money. So we're the ones getting pinched.
So if their warehouses were too full, I think that's why they've kept the pricing of removals low, because they want sellers to remove it if it's kind of overstock inventory that's not needed to be there. But now they're basically flipping it. They're doubling the price and they're saying, we don't care whether you remove it or not. So does that mean they have enough space, you think, heading into this year, that, or is it just that they're tired of losing money on removal and disposal fees?
Oh, I'm sure they're tired of eating, because you and I know how much it costs to ship things. It's not cheap. And we know that they have amazing rates, but they have been losing a ton of money on those returns.
Here's one thought. Liquidation. So I don't know how much you've looked into the Amazon liquidation program. Have you looked at that really much? We don't use
a little bit.
So we don't use it because we don't like it for private label reasons, because all of a sudden you have other brands showing up on your listing, right? That's why I would advise most people not to use it if you're selling your own brand. But the fees for liquidation are not changing. So I'm thinking Amazon is trying to push this program. They're raising the disposal removal fees, and they want more people to use their liquidation program. For whatever reason, they found that to be good. I could be wrong based on the fee assessment. I don't know, but that's one conspiracy idea of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like if I'm Amazon, I probably would have done this a long time ago. I don't want sellers sending in garbage that's not going to sell. And so it really, it really pushes you and I to make sure our forecasting is done in a proper way.
Oh, by the way, that reminds me, we've been off. So this came out a while ago, but maybe some of our listeners haven't done it. Amazon has this program when you create a new ASIN that they give you a certain period of months of free storage if it's a new ASIN, but you have to opt into the program. And I'm totally blanking on what it's called. So I didn't plan on talking about this, but if you aren't taking advantage of that, look for this period of free storage when you bring a new ASIN. I just thought of that based on what you said. Okay. I want to cover some trends, Andy. I have something that I was just looking at yesterday that I think is pretty a cool trend. So I want to talk about that. Do you have any trends, any products that you've been looking at this last week that you think are opportunities that sellers potentially look at?
Yeah, I do. I actually have some that we can share.
All right, go. You go first and then I'll go.
Okay. So when we talk about trends and whenever we talk about product research, this is what we're talking about right now. You really want to make sure you focus on keywords that those Amazon customers are putting in that search bar. And one of the ways that we're able to do it is a few things. You can use software like Jungle Scout or Helium 10. If you have brand registry, brand analytics is something that shows up in your Seller Central account. Phenomenal tool on showing you exactly what Amazon customers are shopping for. And so you can see the exact keywords. You can filter it by week, by month, by quarter. So I went back and I filtered in Q4 what some of the highly searched for keywords were that shoppers were putting in. And what's interesting is this is one of them. And this is a phrase, and it's girls' toys age 6 to 8. So you can think there's a lot of parents, a lot of moms, a lot of dads that have girls, right, have daughters, and they want to know kind of what is the hot or trending toy that they could purchase for their daughter. And so they just put in that search bar, girls' toys 6 to 8. Well, that is something as a private label seller, you want to look at that phrase and then think about, hey, is there anything that I can bundle, anything I can put together that would meet that need for this heavily searched for term, which I believe when I looked at it was like in the top 1,000 search for terms on Amazon Q4, where again, the phrase was girls' toys age 6 to 8. And the cool thing is when you do search that term on Amazon, you're going to see a lot of different products come up, which as a Amazon seller is a good thing because it means that there's a lot of opportunity to bring in different products and potentially rank for those keywords. So again, if you were to type in massage gun, you're going to see on that first page, on that second page, almost every listing looks exactly the same. When you type in girls' toys age 6 to 8, you're going to see a lot of variety of products for that search for term, which means that if you bring a bundle or you target, right, a product that can reach those keywords, you have a really good chance of ranking organically for one of the top search for terms on Amazon. So that's just one of my things. And there's a lot of other ones like that. Another one is gifts for dad, gifts for mom. These are super search for terms on Amazon that, what you and I call the golden gaps, where there's still a lot of opportunity for Amazon sellers.
I like it. And you said Q4 obviously is like the peak time for this. So, I mean, we're just done with Q4, but if you were researching this year, when would you be looking to bring a product like this in, do you think, ideally?
Yeah. So what you always want to do generally, again, if you're importing right from China, is you want to be thinking 8 to 9 months ahead of time. And so when I'm researching this, looking at Q4, I'm actually starting to research it now with anticipating that by the time it gets to me, right, by boat, it's probably going to be August, maybe September. And then I'm looking to launch it in October, right at the beginning of Q4.
Makes sense. All right. Any other ones? I got one.
Nope. That's all I have for today.
How much do you know about pickleball?
I know it's a up and coming sport.
Have you ever played it?
I have.
I've played racquetball, tennis, but never pickleball. So I was looking at pickleball. I saw a couple things in like a couple different people talking about pickleball. And I started researching it. Like you said, it's up and coming. There's been it exploded during the pandemic. I think a lot of people at home or whatever. And it's just, I think sports just take different trends at different times, right? Like the life cycle of a sport. And it seems like it's on the rise. So I find it very interesting. There's some competition, but I think because it's rising, like there's opportunity too. How much do you think the number one pickleball net seller is selling per month for the listing? Just take a guess.
No idea. I'm guessing maybe 25,000.
25,000 revenue. Okay.
Yeah.
So this will blow you then. This is Helium 10 estimates, but pickleball by a brand called Boulder, the estimated revenue, and this is coming out of Q4, but 515,000 monthly revenue. Isn't that crazy for a $70 net? So most of the other ones, there's another one at over 100,000. And then most of the other ones are between 30 and 40, 20 and $40,000 estimated revenue. But that's nets. I looked at, so keyword analysis, pickleball is actually 32,000 in the brand analytics search frequency. That's pretty good, not insane. Pickleball net search volume estimated at 12,000 from Helium. So pretty cool there. I think that Boulder one, people might be using it for more than just pickleball. They kind of advertise it as like, what's the other one? Badminton or whatever too. So maybe that's why, because it's kind of like multifunctional, hitting a couple niches. Another product within the pickleball niche is a retriever. So pickleballs are like these little wiffle ball looking things, right? Like, again, I've never played it, but it looks like a mini wiffle ball. There's this thing called like a picker upper for it. What's the keywords? Pickleball picker upper. Yeah. And pickleball gifts and stuff fall under that. So it's a cheap little product, but there's a couple ones doing over 10 grand a month just on pickleball, little plastic picker upper. Again, I think a lot of older people are playing pickleball. Like you don't want to bend over to get it. So just a cool niche that's kind of trending up. Again, whenever we're talking
and my guess is the reviews on it are probably relatively low.
All right, let's see
on that first page.
So for the net, the one is super high at 8,000, and then the rest of them are under 1,000. So there's like the one player and then everything else under 1,000. So yes, I would say relatively low. For the picker upper, sounds funny saying that, super low. So one over 1,000, 1,200, but the rest are like 300, 100, 200, 600, but then a bunch 345, 24, 0. So there's really only like 3 or 4 players there. And again, there's not a ton of keyword demand, but I think this is on the rise. So if you could create a really good pickleball brand, like the brand is known for pickleball, that type of sport, I think there could be opportunity there. But again, disclosure or whatever we disclosure, we always say this is just the concept of looking at trends. We're not recommending to do this, but I thought it was interesting. So pickleball, something to keep on your radar. If you had been going to China the last 2 years, you probably would have saw some pickleball stuff, but sadly, we haven't been able to. All right, I like that. I want to get into a tribe spot. Like you said, you had a story to tell. Let's hear your story about a seller that you said, a seller that you knew that made a big mistake.
Oh, one of these things that we always want to do is we want to share with folks as they're getting into selling on Amazon, as they're getting into importing, that there are procedures and processes that you have to follow. We often say, hey, look, don't just blindly go into selling on Amazon. So, whatever budget you have, you want to budget some of that for either purchasing a course, getting some coaching, because you don't want to go blindly. Like we did at the beginning, we made a lot of mistakes. And the story that I'm about to share is, again, somebody who saw the opportunity but got in a little bit over her head. So whenever you're importing products, you got to make sure you know the compliance rules for those products. And this particular seller saw an opportunity, and I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it had something to do very similar to like a life jacket. And so she saw that opportunity on Amazon, got the manufacturer, produced it, had a whole container shipped over. And when it landed at the port, for whatever reason, customs searched it, looked at their product, and she didn't have the right warning labels on these life jackets. And so because she didn't, they would not allow that container to be unloaded. So it was stuck there in the port. And this is like 3 or 4 years ago, $150,000 order. And the only thing she could do was ship it back to China. So she didn't have the money to do that. So what ends up happening is, and it's crazy, like if you can't unload a container at a port, those storage fees are insane. Like we're talking $300 a day. So she basically was out $150,000 because she didn't understand the compliance around creating a product. So you always have to make sure you know that before you bring something in.
That's sickening. What would you do if that was you? What would you do in you were relatively cash strapped? Let's say, if this was 4 years ago, what would you do?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing she could have done is try to get money, ask people for money to be able to ship that back to the manufacturer, and then hopefully be able to correct, whatever the error was on those units. That probably would have been the most cost savings approach, but she wasn't in that situation. So she just kind of let it go.
Yeah, because back then containers were only 3,000 per weight, right? So obviously you're wasting a lot of money, but better than losing all that. So yeah, that's probably would have been the best move, to try to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and really try to go into save mode and try to get it back. So that's it. Fees have gone way up though, right? So port fees. How much did you say that brand that we knew that was acquiring another brand that had stuff stuck at port? How much were they paying a week or month or day? What was the number?
They ended up having to pay close to $1 million in port storage fees.
Okay, so I know we're not giving background, but they were buying another brand that went bankrupt basically and was stuck at port, and they had to pay the fees once they took over the brand. Yeah, it was $1 million. This was a huge brand, obviously, but yeah, definitely don't mess around when it comes to importing. We always say this: like, use a good freight forwarder who has a good customs broker on staff. Those are kind of seller 101s when you're importing. So yeah, scary story, but hopefully that helps someone. Hopefully that helps someone avoid a mistake in the future. By the way, Amazon just came out in like health supplements, which I am guessing is like all kinds of supplements that we always talk about and think about when selling. A lot of them got removed recently because sellers didn't have the right documentation. So if you sell supplements or you plan to, this kind of falls under that same story that Andy just talked about, or warning. You have to have your documentation really good. I think most US supplement manufacturers probably know how to provide that. Just make sure that you don't run into that mistake sending stuff in and then get restricted. All right. I want to hit a tribe spotlight real quick, Andy, if you still have a couple minutes. This is a really cool story that a mother-son team posted in the Amazon seller tribe just this last week on the 4th of January. They were kind of doing like an end of year recap. This is a large arbitrage seller. It was a long post, so I'm going to try to condense it. But here's kind of the overview. And I'm not saying their names just for, their confidentiality. I didn't ask them if I could say this, but they openly posted it in our tribe group. They said they went from $3 million of sales in 2020 to just under 6 million in 2021. So that's insane growth, right? 100% growth from at that size in 1 year. And they posted a screenshot that ended at 5.84 million for the year. And 95% of that is retail arbitrage, which is very impressive because think about the amount of work, how many stores you have to hit. They have a relatively small team. I know they have a couple of shoppers, but it's mostly, I think Griff does most of the shopping, right? So I think it's mostly him. And so that was really, really cool to see that. And she had a good recap. I just want to put here, the mom of this mother-son team. They said 2022 will be a year of automation of RA and online arbitrage. And going forward, we'll be looking into other streams. So they've kind of, said, hey, we have a lot into RA now. We want to diversify a little bit. They hired someone to be our assistant and take over most of our tasks. As we hire more, looking to hire 3 in the next few months, we take in consideration who we hire. We want to pay well, treat them like family. We kind of already talked about this. Maybe we should give them advice more like team than family and be treated back in the same way. This is what we have right now. We only want to make it better. Our team is amazing and they help us out any way they can. We aren't in a hurry. We want the right people, but it'll be a start. So I thought this post went good with our topic that we talked about. She goes on to say, Tribe has always been a part of our learning process and system implementation. What we have learned from the Amazon Seller Tribe has been life-changing for us, and it's a big part of our success. This past week, we've taken 2021 numbers and figured down to the day, week, month, what we want to spend in 2022. Is that crazy? When I read that, I said, wow, they're definitely taking it to another level of I haven't seen in many arbitrage sellers. They're saying for this year, 2022, they know down to the day what they want to spend on product. Have you seen anyone get that far ahead in their forecasting for arbitrage?
No, but that's an excellent way to do it.
Yeah, they're kind of getting next level with their arbitrage. And again, they hit 6 million last year. That's a huge arbitrage business. So just to wrap it up, they said, we hope each of you will prosper next year. Have a wonderful 2022. And when Tribe 7 rolls out, which is the coaching program that Gary, Ray, and Gay Lisby do within the Amazon Seller Tribe, don't walk, jump on it. If it's a money thing, do it. It'll be worth it. I won't hesitate. And then she ends with this. We have grown 600% in 4 years. And that is when we joined the tribe. So 600% growth in the last 4 years, up to 6 million. That's crazy. So I would not be surprised if they get to the 8-figure mark in 2022. They have an awesome team, but I think they're recognizing what we talked about, like to get from 1 million to 6 million, they need to hire these people. And now to get to the 8-figure mark, they're definitely going to need to hire, kind of get up to that 10 plus team member mark that I was talking about. And they're doing it very efficiently as far as the amount of revenue they have per team member right now. So hats off to them. They're awesome members of the Amazon Seller Tribe, coaches and members, and just awesome story. So I just want to say congrats to them for sure. All right. And then lastly here, in AMZ Pro Spotlight, I just want to talk about this real quick. So a little bit of background, right? We started AMZ Professional 5 years, I think now. It was like early 2017. It's hard to believe the timeline, because in our own businesses, we were losing so much money to lost reimbursements that Amazon was not reimbursing us for, right? And basically realized that you only have so long to get your money back. And at the time, there was very few services out there. So I was trying to do this myself. Andy, I don't think you were doing it at all. So you had lost a lot of money for several years. I went in and helped you at one point, and I was doing this for you and a couple other friends. And so we basically said, hey, let's do this for Amazon sellers. We created AMZ Professional. Actually, it was called Reimbursement Ninja at first, so we rebranded it. But we created AMZ Professional, and since that time, we've helped hundreds and hundreds of sellers get literally hundreds of thousands. Actually, I think it's 1.8 million or 2 million that we're up to now of total reimbursement dollars that we've helped sellers get back. And so I just want to point out, most sellers don't realize that Amazon is not very good at doing their reimbursement calculations by themselves. Like if you trust them with it right now, your faith is misplaced in Amazon. They will not give you all your money back. So definitely don't just trust them with it. You have to file cases to get money back. Most sellers we're seeing have between 1% and 3% of monthly revenue recovered in reimbursements. Now, Amazon might give a portion of that back, but not all of it, typically just by themselves, automated. And then if you wait more than 18 months for most reimbursements, they're gone forever. So that's the bad news if you haven't done it. The good news is that if you do it now, you can go back those 18 months and get that money back. For FBA shipments inbound, I believe you only have 6 months. So it's a lot shorter. And the frustrating part with that is that Amazon waits a while before you can even file cases. So they want to make sure that everything's checked in. And so you have to wait for a month or two before you can even file your inbound shipments. And then they only give you 6 to 9 months, whatever it is. So it's the short window that's easy to forget about. So those are a really big pain. And then the other thing is, in the last 6 months, Amazon's really cracked down on the amount of invoices that you need to submit for those FBA shipments that get lost. It used to be once in a while, I think they had a dollar threshold or a unit threshold. Now it seems like every time you submit a reimbursement for that, they ask you for the documentation. So that's gotten a lot harder. And so my recommendation is save your BOLs and receipts in an organized way to be able to do that. With AMZ Pro, we reach out whenever we need it to the seller, and we just ask, hey, can you submit this to us? And then we submit it to Amazon on behalf. But I just wanted to talk about that because I think it's so important. I think we mentioned it a week or two ago. This time of the year is the best time of the year to get reimbursements because you just went through Q4. Buyers had a longer time period to kind of hold inventory, do returns right through January 31st. So January, February, you definitely want to take advantage of, or you want to do this, or you're just losing straight up cash to your business. And so amzprofessional.com, or you can go to amazingfreedom.com and go to our services and get there. We charge a flat rate instead of a commission. So it's a lot cheaper if you have a high volume of reimbursements for sure. So recommend starting there at least with the service. And then this last week, we actually had a seller again who got over $3,000 back from one single FBA shipment. So that's what's crazy is you could send in basically a container's worth of your product, and Amazon could lose 10% of it, and you could be out 10% of your profit, your margins, expense, and not really handle it properly because it's so easy to let it slide as you get busy. So I thought that was a cool success story. And I definitely want to keep reminding people how important it is to stay on top of your management. Either do it yourself with the team member. We're talking about teams this whole podcast, or use a service like AMZ Professional to get it done for you. We try to make it as easy as possible, doing reimbursements and negative seller feedback. All right, that's all I have today, Andy. I know we're going long and we got to run. So that's all I have. If you want updates on our newsletter, our blog, our $10 million challenge, what we're doing day to day, week to week in our own business and how we're trying to help sellers, then go to amazingfreedom.com and sign up to be an insider. That's going to be the best way for you to get everything you need to know about the Amazon Seller Tribe, AMZ Pro, our weekly and monthly updates. And we will do our best to add value to you. Again, we have a portfolio of brands that does $15 million in sales year to year. A lot of sellers fail when it comes to selling online, and we don't want you to be one of them. So join us for the journey, and thanks for sharing with others. Appreciate it, Andy. That's all for me. Take care. That's the pod.
See everyone.
See you guys.